Guys, coming at you with a three-dimensional extravaganza about math. Okay, we're doing part 2 with volume, and this time we're going to talk about compound shapes. So, first I'm going to talk about the definition of volume, then I'm going to go through 3 examples here for you. Alright, let's take a look. First, the definition of volume. It's the amount of fluid contained in a three-dimensional object. Okay, so think of a glass or a bucket or anything that you can put fluid in. That's what we're talking about. And keep in mind, air or gases are also considered fluids. Alright, let's take a look at the first example. So, the first one we're going to talk about is this shape here. This shape looks like an ice cream cone, and usually the word problems involve ice cream. But this ice cream defies gravity. So this is half a sphere and a cone. So I'm going to need these two formulas. So let's get started. I'm going to start with the cone for no apparent reason other than I choose to. So a cone, the volume of the cone is V equals 1/3 pi r squared times h. The volume is composed of the radius and the height, and that's what we need. So I have the height, which is 8, and the radius is 4. So that's going to give me 1/3 pi 16. Well, let me punch that in for you so you guys can see it. 4 squared times 8. 4 squared is 16. I was getting a little ahead of myself there. Times 8. Okay, and now watch what I'm going to do here. I'm going to plug this into the calculator without pi. So that's 128 over 3. So I'm going to say V equals 128 over 3 pi. There's a reason why I'm doing that, and I think, this is the opinion of this guy, I think I'm making the problem easier for myself by keeping things in terms of pi, or leaving pi to the side. So from there, now I've got to find the volume of the sphere, but this is only half a sphere. There's no sphere underneath here. So that's why I say it's like the ice cream's defying gravity. So let's do that. So V equals 4/3 pi 4 cubed. Now, as I punch this into the calculator, I'll explain to you that this is a typical standardized test question. So that's kind of why it is what it is. And once again, I've only plugged in the fraction and the radius and kept pi out to the side. And there's pi. Now I have to divide this by 2. So I'm just going to divide that by 2. My calculator will allow that, and that's going to be 128 over 3. Okay. Hear me out here. Right now, I have to add 128 over 3 and 128 over 3, right? This is the cylinder. Oh, excuse me, the cone. And this is the sphere. If I multiply that by pi and hit that, I gotta deal with this decimal. I personally think it's easier for me to say 128 over 3 plus 128 over 3. If I don't have a fancy calculator, I would just be doing 128 plus 128. I got 256. A little bit more straightforward than working with decimals, in my opinion. So the volume of the entire object, so I'm going to say total volume is 256/3 pi. For those of us that need to have decimals, I will go through the trouble of converting it for you. There we go. And then times pi. And that's 268.08. And in this case, meters cubed. Okay, next. Okay, we're going to find the volume of a capsule. So a capsule has a sphere, half each on one end, and then a cylinder in the middle. So that's what I'm going to be doing. I'm going to be using the volume of a cylinder and a sphere. So just like before, I'm going to find a cylinder and a sphere. So let's do that. So the cylinder, I'm going to start there. Pi r squared times h. If you want to stay organized, here's just a random thought. You can give yourself a subscript and call that V subscript C. Might be helpful to some of you. So I'm going to say this is the diameter they gave me. Could be hard to read with that high quality artwork there. So that's going to be 5 squared because the radius is the diameter divided by 2. So the radius is 10 divided by 2, which gives me 5. Okay, that's just off to the side. Times the height. So VC equals pi 25 times 8. Now, my experience based on what I just showed you, I'm just gonna, I look at it as this 25 times 8. I'm not even worried about pi. Because pi is its own symbol. So that's 200 pi. If I wasn't talking, I could have taken a second and done that in my head. So now, the volume of a sphere. So 4/3 pi 5 cubed. And I want to point out, with a little bit of experience, you guys could do this in your head too if you look at it this way. I am thoroughly convinced, and it would be difficult to convince me of otherwise, that dealing with 3.14 is easier. Now, you will notice that I use the same radius. This cylinder and this sphere meet exactly. So that means they're sharing, or the radius for both of these shapes is the same. So now I'm going to say 125 times 4/3. And that gives me 500/3 pi. I don't mind showing you guys this by hand because this is pretty straightforward. So I have to add now 500/3 times 200. 200. What am I saying? So 500/3 plus 200/1. I need a common denominator, so I'm going to multiply the top and the bottom by 3. So 500/3 plus 600/3 gives me 1100/3 pi. Done. If I didn't do it that way, I would need a calculator. I can't add and multiply 3.14 and do all that stuff without a calculator. And so this could be, if you insist on sticking with decimals, that. And I guess feet cubed here. Okay, last example. So this is a cylinder and half a sphere. So this is going to be similar to that cone and half a sphere. I'm going to say sphere, cylinder. I will point out I would really focus on being as organized as you can when you do this. I know it's easy for me to say. I have a lot of experience in doing this. But try your best to kind of keep things separated and don't let it all get muddled together. So once again, the half sphere or the hemisphere is sharing a radius. So both of these are going to have a radius of 6. I'm going to start with the cylinder again. The truth be known, it's because I'm left-handed. So it's just easier for me to start on this side. The trials and tribulations of being left-handed. So 36, 6 squared is 36. 36 times 10 is 360 pi. With a little bit of experience, you can do that too. Now, V 4/3 pi 6 cubed. So I don't know what 6 cubed is off the top of my head. That's 216. 216 is divisible by 3. I'll tell you in a second how I knew that. So 2 plus 1 plus 6 is 9. And 9 is divisible by 3. Nice little division trick there. So, and the reason why that's important is because this might come out to not be a fraction. So 4/3 times 216 is 288. So that's 288 pi. I will show you how to do this if you don't have a fancy calculator. And it will also explain why I did that front thinking there. So if I did not have a fancy calculator, I could say 216 times 4, then divide by 3, which is 288. And because I figured out ahead of time that this is divisible by 3, I was pretty certain I was not going to come out to a decimal. So now I have to add these two together. Much easier to do without having to worry about decimals. So I could plug that straight in, or I could work it out. But for the interest of time, I'm not going to show you guys how to add. So that's the total volume. The total volume is 648 pi. Because all I did is I added 288 and 360 together. Now, times pi. If I want to, I can convert that to a decimal. If for whatever reason you need to. 2035.75. Okay, the one thing I'm going to mention in closing on this video is that if you have a pi symbol handy on your calculator, I would use that over using 3.14. 3.14 is not pi. Pi is a much longer number than that. Pi goes on forever. So you could find yourself running into some rounding issues if you're using 3.14. Of course, you're limited to what you have. So if you don't have access to a calculator that has a pi button, and then 3.14 it is. We do the best we can, right? Okay, guys, this is the video on part 2 of volume, compound shapes. I hope you guys found it helpful.